Ladies, gentlemen, Speakerhead Squad, what is going on? It is you boys, Speakerhead, and welcome back to another video. As many of you guys know, I love Legend Scale Transformers regardless of which company it comes from. And also many of you guys know that I love posing my Transformers. Because I've done a few videos on each topic, I thought it'd be fun to do a video talking about how to pose your Legend Scale figures. But before we get into the video, I do want to mention if you guys enjoy this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe because it really does help me out. Also, if you enjoy any of the music in this video, it's all part of my royalty-free music label, Speakerhead Studios. All the music on this label is completely royalty-free, so go ahead and use it for any of your content creating needs. Finally, I do want to mention if you ever want to catch me live, I do stream over at Speakerhead Live. But now that we got all that out of the way, let's get into the discussion. To start out, I do want to mention I'm only going to be showing a few different poses, but that's because these are just going to be basic molds to all other poses. Pretty much once you get the figures into these poses, you can really adjust and modify it to any way you like to really make it unique. But now without further ado, let's actually talk about the poses. So the first pose we're going to talk about is just going to be your basic stance for your figures. First, you want to slightly rotate the legs outwards. Next, you want to take both of the arms and slightly rotate them inwards. After that, you want to slightly rotate the chest left or right, whichever way you choose. And then finally adjust the head so it's facing the same way as the lower torso. And there you have a basic stance for your Legend Scale figures. This is always a personal favorite stance of mine because it looks better than just standing straight. Plus, this stance takes up about the same amount of space as him standing straight, so it's great if you have a lot of figures on one shelf. If you do want more of a cinematic or slightly more heroic pose, you can always do this as well. Slightly rotate the body from the crotch up, just very slightly back. And then this pose does only work with an ab crunch, but you want to use that ab crunch and then bring that up or maybe even slightly past straight up. And then do any minor adjustments to the figure. And there you have a slight variant to that stance. The next pose we're going to do is a battle action pose for your figures. The first thing you want to do is spread the legs apart and bring both legs forward, but you do want to bring one leg more forward than the other. Then you also want to bend at the knees, but whichever leg is forward you want to bend more. Next, you want to rotate the upper body from the crotch upwards, slightly backwards. Then, assuming your figure has an ab crunch, you want to bring that ab crunch forward. If your figure doesn't have an ab crunch, then sadly you'll have to skip this step. Next, you want to rotate the torso either left or right. It doesn't really matter which direction you choose, but in this example I chose to do it on the side with the forward leg. Next, bring the arm of whichever hand has the blaster up and face it towards the way of the crotch plate. Next, you want to adjust the figure's head and blaster so that way it's somewhat looking down the side of the blaster, or at least in the same direction as the blaster. Then with the arm we haven't used yet, we're going to want to bring that outwards, and then adjust the hands to however you'd like. Then finally do any minor adjustments you may have to, but there you have a nice battle action pose for your figures. This is the go-to pose I use for most of my figures, and I really like it because you can really adjust it and modify it to however you'd like to get some really unique poses. Moving on to our next pose, it's going to be a more unique pose to a certain character, and that's going to be Optimus Prime's iconic jump. I will mention before we get into this pose that you will need a stand for this character if you do plan on displaying him in this pose. The first thing you want to do is bring one of the legs all the way forward and bend that knee as much as possible. Then with the other leg you want to bring that back and slightly bend that knee. So then you should have him in somewhat of a pose like this. Next, you want to rotate the chest left or right. You want to rotate the chest so it's facing towards the forward leg. Then you want to use the ab crunch of your figure and move it slightly forward. You can choose to do it before or after you rotate the chest. Then you want to have the arm in the blaster that's forward and bring that arm upwards. Then as usual, you want to adjust the head in the blaster so it's facing the same way as the lower crotch plate. Then of course make sure that the figure is somewhat looking the same way or down the sights of the blaster. Then finally with that opposite arm, you want to bring that outwards. I personally like to really exaggerate this. I like to bring this outward and make it just shy of 90 degrees. Then finally you also want to bend the elbow and maybe rotate the arm. Other than that, there you have your Optimus and his iconic jump. I will mention that you can do this both with the New Age and Magic Square versions, so go ahead and do it with both. Then moving on to our last pose, and that's going to be a running pose. First you want to bring one of the legs fairly far forward and bend that knee. Then with the opposite leg you want to bring that back and slightly bend the knee. Next you want to rotate the upper torso towards the forward leg. If your figure has an ab crunch, you can very slightly bring that forward to add a little bit more character to it. So once you have your figure in this pose, you're going to want to bring whichever arm is forward and slightly bring that forward. Then you want to rotate the arm inwards and bend the elbow. Then with the opposite arm, you want to bring that one backwards. And just like the other arm, you want to rotate the arm inwards and bend at the elbow. Finally, adjust the head so it's looking straight the same direction as the lower torso. Then do any minor adjustments you may need to for stability, and there you have a nice running pose for your figure. I really like this pose, and you can honestly adjust it to get any sort of running position you want. You just need to learn what a natural running pose looks like, and you can easily do any sort of running position. Then if you also want to do a walking position for your figures, that's also very simple. All you have to do is slightly tone down every single one of the steps that I showed you. Because walking is essentially just a toned down version of running, it is really easy to take that previous pose and put it into this one. And one final tip I did want to throw in here, and it isn't really a pose, but it is something I did want to mention, is if you do have a lot of figures that are generally the same height and you do want to make them all very slightly different, then you can always play with the knees and the hips of the figures. Depending on the figure, if you mess with the knees or the hips, you can usually adjust it and make either slightly taller or lower of what you'd like. I will mention that not every single figure works with this, so just play with each one and see which one works and which one doesn't. This does help if you collect a blend of New Age and Magic Square figures. Both companies have slightly different sized figures, so it does help make some figures a little bit more similar size. Once again, not exactly a pose, but it is a helpful tip. Right now I'll put up a few different pictures of all these photos so that way you guys can get an idea of all the different variants you can do. And with that, that's going to be all the poses I have for you guys. Like I said, a lot of these poses are very generic, but that's why you can adjust them and make them unique to yourself. But with that, that's going to be it for me, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and let me know if there's any other poses you'd like me to do. Once again, if you guys enjoyed this content or found any of these poses helpful, make sure to like, subscribe. It really does help me out. And then finally, once again, if you guys enjoyed any of the music in this video, it's all part of my royalty-free music label. Link in the description. But that's going to be it for me, so I'll catch everyone in the next one. Peace.